Religious liberty is back. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Religious liberty, top of this White House administration's policies. And that's a good thing, not just for America, because as you know, America was founded on an ideal of God-given individual liberties and rights. And as I've said a bazillion times, you can't have God-given liberties and rights if you remove God from that equation. All that remains is a void, and then government swoops in to fill that void, and instead of God-given, you have government granted. So thankfully, because of the emphasis of this White House administration on religious liberty and the concern this administration has to keep religious liberty as a priority in all its policies, not just in America, but around the world, we have religious liberty being talked about again, and not just being talked about as if it matters, but actually being enforced as a right of the citizenry. This is such a good time for America, such a great time for countries around the world that care about liberty as well, because without religious liberty, you really don't have much of any other liberty. Before I get into more of this, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app. At Real Life Network, that is the faith-based news outreach of Pastor Jack Hibbs's Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills Church in California. You may also get Bold and Blunt at WashingtonTimes.com, where if you are not a subscriber to my newsletter, The Best of Cheryl Chumley, I would invite you, make it a New Year's resolution, make it an end of the year resolution to go to WashingtonTimes.com and scroll to the bottom of the page, find the newsletter section, click on it, and enter your email to be signed up for my 3 times a week newsletter. You'll get my commentaries that I write, giving you the bullet points you need to fight the far left and the liars, which is to say the Democrat Party, all day long. And you'll also get delivered right to your email box my Bold and Blunt podcast, as well as my, it's seeming to shape up to be once a week video versions of Bold and Blunt. So you don't want to miss that. All you need to do is enter your email address, as I said. But you may also get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. And if you do go to, say, Spotify to get Bold and Blunt, it's kind of cool because you can see all the ratings that people give to Bold and Blunt, the comments they make about it. And I gotta say, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Anyhow, establishment of the Religious Liberty Commission. If you recall, that was an executive order signed by President Donald Trump May 1st of this year. Such a happy day. It will go down in history, a day that lives in the minds and hearts of Americans as a day of solidifying what is crucial to the foundation of America, that is to say, religious liberty, by the authority vested in me as president. This is President Donald Trump speaking in his executive order, not me. By the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. It shall be the policy of the executive branch to vigorously enforce the historic and robust protections for religious liberty enshrined in federal law. The founders envisioned a nation in which religious voices and views are integral to a vibrant public square and human flourishing, and in which religious people and institutions are free to practice their faith without fear of discrimination or hostility from the government. You know, we need a new executive order saying the same thing, only in place of government put Islam, right? Islamic adherents, Islam believers, Muslims, right? Put that in place, because what we're seeing around the world right now is this horrendous, atrocious, vicious uprising of, they mask as pro-Palestinian, but what they really are is pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, pro-terrorist, pro-Iran, anti-Israel, anti-America, anti-West, anti-freedom, and most definitely anti-Christianity, anti-Christian God, anti-Judeo-Christian God. We're seeing an uprising of these forces, not just around the world, but goodness, look at what's taking place, not just on America's college campuses. Thankfully, that has calmed, but we go back in time a year, and it really was burn, baby, burn on the college campuses with all the pro-Hamas waving flags, right? And then you look out what's happening in certain spots of Michigan and other parts in America. Wherever there is a leftist uprising, there seems to be part and parcel of that protest movement. This whole radical Islamic type of population that just waves the Palestinian banners, waves the pro-Hamas signs and banners, and just denounces all things America, all the while swearing death to Israel, death to America, death to the West. And so this administration is fighting that, right? Because there's religious liberty in America, but there's no cult liberty in America, right? You can't be a cult in America and take your cultish viciousness to the streets without fear of retribution, right? The Constitution, the First Amendment, doesn't guarantee freedom of cult or anything like that. It's just freedom of worship, freedom of religion. So this is what this White House is recognizing, and we need to also understand that the forces that are fighting against it, by and large, have their own religion, right? And their religion is more cultish than religion, but if you call it that, then they will attack you, right? Because it's not just enough in this country to allow tolerance for different religions according to Islam. It's Islam's belief that religious tolerance is opposite their religious beliefs. It's either Islam or nothing. Either Islam or you're the infidel. And so this is what we have springing up in America, going forth around the world. And this White House is not only recognizing it, but fighting back with a guarantee of religious liberty and pushing it forward even into its foreign policy. You know, go back in time to the Joe Biden administration and look at what Joe Biden issued by way of executive orders in his early days of White House office. And it was guarantees to put climate change through every cabinet, through every agency that he had, through foreign policy. Climate change, climate change, climate change. It was all about zero emissions. He wanted his EPA, of course, right, to deal with climate change. But the State Department, the Defense Department, foreign policy, it was all supposed to take into consideration climate change as its number one priority. And it was supposed to, all these cabinet heads and all these executive level officials were supposed to take these climate change, zero emissions, marching policies into their various agencies, through their various departments, and come up with a game plan in how they were going to push forward that environmentalism for all 4 years of Joe Biden's administration. So you had the Defense Department, you had the State Department, of course the EPA, you had all the departments, you had Treasury, for crying out loud, jumping aboard this and running wild with it. You had all these agencies and agency heads devising ways and strategies to push climate change, to enmesh climate change with the various missions of these agencies. Now, look at this administration, look at this White House, And they're, in essence, doing the same thing, right? Weaving something into all their agencies and foreign policy and departments, but it's called religious liberty. It's called something that's foundational to America. So this is something that is not only great for the future of America, where, as I said, it's all about God given, nothing about government granted, but it's great for the governments of the world that seek to equip their own citizens with the liberties and rights they need in order to ensure freedom in their various sovereign nations well into the future. Religious liberty, that's where it's at. And I have a guest with me today who is very schooled and skilled and experienced in talking about religious liberty because he is the senior advisor of the National Association of Christian Lawmakers. And he spends half his time in America, half his time in Israel. Matt Faraci, I want to thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. So great to have you back.
Cheryl, I consider it a great honor of my life that I get to be a repeat customer on your esteemed show.
That just sounds so sweet, and I appreciate that. But we have so much to delve into. The Christmas season approaches. Religious liberty is top of the list, it seems, for this White House administration. And I know you, as senior advisor of the National Association for Christian Lawmakers, you have quite a bit to say about this topic. Do you want to start with Syria first? What's going on there?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the first thing, if I can just mention, Cheryl, is that as we're looking at, Christmas coming up and Americans are rightly celebrating a Christian holiday in a Christian country, there are Christians around the world who are being persecuted. And I think persecuted sounds like a bad word, but it's not bad enough, because by persecuted, I mean killed, slaughtered, raped, absolutely horrific things happening to Christians all over the world. And of course, so that's the kind of the larger context that I wanted to mention, because a lot of times Christians in other countries say to me, hey, don't Christians in America care about us? And as a Jew, of course, I care about Christians. Christians are the best friends we've ever had. And I tell them, look, Christians in America care about you. They just don't know what to do. And so just to give your listeners a to-do, Cheryl, right off the bat, the National Association of Christian Lawmakers is doing a lot of work on this. There's also a great group called Save the Persecuted Christians.
Yep.
You can go visit savethepersecutedchristians.org. Dee Dee Logson, she's awesome, is doing a ton of work on this issue. And so the latest news is that we know that there's been a vicious persecution of Christians and another group of people called the Druze. The Druze are actually, I don't know if you knew this, Cheryl, did you know that the Druze are the descendants of Jethro in the Bible, Moses' father-in-law?
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yes. And the Druze, now remember, Syria is the cradle of Christianity. It's where Christianity started. Congressman Marlon Stutzman said the other day that we should have a slogan: "Make Syria Christian again," right? And so in Syria, especially in southern Syria, the Druze, again, who actually, if you think about it, are responsible for the American system of government, because if I can remind everybody, the scene, Moses is basically taking care of the Israelites in the desert by himself, and his father-in-law Jethro shows up and says, "Moses, are you nuts? You can't do this all yourself. Choose from among you leaders of tens, leaders of 50s. And this model, which became the Hebrew Republic, as it's later was known, is the model that the founding fathers of America used to look at the government structure for America. So we owe a lot to the Druze. We owe a lot to the Christians in Syria. And the new government, Syria's been in civil war. Just to catch people up what happened, there's a new government that's been installed by a former terrorist, Ahmed al-Shara. And look, the President Trump is asking us to trust him and asking us to give this new government a shot. And so what happened was that last week, Congress passed the National Defense Authorization Act. And in that act was something called the Caesar Act. And the Caesar Act were sanctions that were put on Syria during the Assad regime for the human rights abuses and for all the things that were happening. That was removed. The Caesar Act was removed. So Congress honored President Trump's trust and request to give Syria, the quote unquote, the kind of new Syria, a chance by removing the sanctions. However, there's two sort of key things that also happened. Senator Lindsey Graham included a provision that we call snapbacks. And basically what it says is if Syria doesn't abide by these certain conditions, doesn't fight terrorism, doesn't do this, if Syria doesn't, for example, respect religious minorities that are not Muslims, then the sanctions can be snapped back. They can be reimposed back on Syria for, future bad behavior. And so 134 members of Congress echoing this issued a statement which came out. That's a lot of members of Congress issued a statement that came out last Friday and essentially said, there's some real details here that we can get into, but they essentially said, hey, al-Shara, we're giving you a shot. We're letting you try to start a new Syria, but we're watching you. And we want you to know that Congress is paying attention. And the president has said likewise, hey, we're going to give him a shot, but the persecution of religious minorities has to stop. And right now, there's a city in southern Syria called Sweda, where somewhere around 700,000 people are surrounded. Nobody can get in, nobody can get out. There's starvation, there's lack of water, there's all kinds of issues going on. And so that's going to be one of the first things that Congress has said they want to see that get fixed. And in the letter, they said they look forward to being invited to inspect Sweda next year to be able to measure that there's actual progress. So, Cheryl, what's exciting about all this, okay, is that we've talked the talk on religious freedom for so long and not really substantively done anything. And now the United States is starting to walk the walk and saying, hey, we expect you to treat Christians and other religious minorities with dignity and respect. And if you don't, the U.S. is you're going to have problems, and we're going to use the leverage that we have to compel you to respect religious freedom.
So in Syria, it's not just the Druze; it's also the Kurds and a couple other minority religious
Alawites,
right? Yeah. That benefit from
anybody
this.
That's not Muslim.
But here's the asterisks, I guess. The fact that it was primarily House Republicans that have petitioned for this. We're the Democrats, right? And also we had that recent ISIS attack, fatal killings of 2 U.S. service members along with a civilian interpreter. And now the Trump administration has launched airstrikes in Syria to go after ISIS. So sort of frame that, put those two items into perspective for us, Matt.
Yeah, well, here's the problem, Cheryl. I want you to imagine, like, I don't know, like an American political situation like this. Imagine you have a new administration, and some of the members of the president's cabinet are former Antifa. Okay, that's not, unfortunately, if you're thinking about like Mamdani's in New York, there probably are former or current Antifa people in there. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't surprise me, right? And Antifa is like a watered down version, let's say, of ISIS. So what do you do when you have those people actually in your government? And that's what happened in July when the Damascus sent forces down to Sweda to kind of, get the place under control. And they did it. And what did those forces do? They conducted an October 7th type of slaughter. They burned just as an example, they burned an old man alive in his wheelchair. They threw grandparents off of rooftops with their grandchildren. They raped children and left them on people's front porch. I mean, unspeakable kind of horrors, Cheryl. And so this is the delicate balance in Syria is, yes, like they're trying to geographically be a country, but you can't kill people in the process. And of course, you've had uh, a very, very long and bloody and brutal civil war. And so, the administration's trying to get this right and give al-Shara a chance. But again, at the same time, he's first of all, he's a former terrorist, so we don't know where he's at.
Right, right.
I think a lot of indications, if you look at least at southern Syria, is has not been on the right side and of this issue with regard to religious freedom, and so the U.S. needs to keep up the pressure and insist that that is the case. I know I've had multiple reports that when al-Shara did come to Washington, the president spoke to him quite sternly about it, actually.
So do you think it's too preliminary for America to lift these sanctions, or do you think it's a good show of faith?
That's, you know what, Cheryl, that's a really good question.
That's the question, right?
Right. It's a $64 million question because the issue is, yes, you want to give Syria a chance to rebuild. The question is, are those rebuilding dollars that come at the removal of the sanctions going to go to rebuilding, or are they just going to be buying missiles? Right? Remember, this is the Middle East. It's a very rough neighborhood. That's the $64 million question. And as you saw from the letter, there's a lot of people that are skeptical about that, and they're keeping a very, very close eye and monitoring the situation, because you also have to understand, Cheryl, that Syria, could pose a really serious threat to Israel again, and a key U.S. ally, despite what Tucker Carlson might say. And so that's another consideration. And what the president's trying to do in the Middle East, give him credit. He's trying to do something. He's trying to do the toughest thing in the toughest neighborhood in the world.
Without a doubt. And even though there are no guarantees when it comes to that region, at least this administration is taking steps. And, to get back to the more important point here, the one of religious liberty, religious freedoms, this administration isn't just focused on Syria. The Republicans aren't just focused on Syria. Nigeria, what else is going on with religious freedom that you see this administration is pushing around the world?
Yeah, so Mark Walker, former Congressman Mark Walker, and also a pastor, and also just for the record for your listeners, he was a pastor in Greenville, North Carolina, and produced a Christmas show with a cast of like 450 people in it.
Oh wow!
So when he first ran for Congress, I said. Mark, it seems like you're taking a step down to run run for Congress. You're this really big producer. Anyway, so he laughed about that. So Mark has identified, he's President Trump's nominee for the Ambassador for International Religious Freedom. It's that role is the principal advisor to the president and to the Secretary of State on issues of religious freedom. And his nomination has now been held up, I believe, for 8 months. Jeez. Because of petty personal things that are happening in the Senate that need to stop. And Mark needs to be confirmed immediately because he is the point person, and the president said so about a week ago, because Mark is the point person looking over all this. And Mark has identified 19 different countries where Christians are at high risk. We know, obviously, Cheryl, that Nigeria is one of them. But there are countries all around the world where Christians are not safe. Christians are being persecuted. And again, I love this idea that the president came up with and I heard that the State Department was not happy about it, and he had to jam it through like he's had to do so many other things against the will of the deep state. But the fact is that why should America support countries that don't respect religious freedom? Or if they don't, why shouldn't America pressure them to do so? Because if you don't have religious freedom, what do you have? You have nothing.
Right.
I would argue to you, Cheryl, and I think you'd agree, if you don't have religious freedom, you don't have freedom of speech anyway. Like, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, and it's the foundation of America, the quest for religious freedom. There were other factors, but it was first and foremost religious freedom. So we should be leading the world on this. And I'd like to know, why aren't Democrats helping with this? Why does it seem to be, maybe there's a couple of them out there that are pushing for it, Senator Fetterman maybe, but it seems to me that Republicans by and large are carrying the weight on this.
You know, Cheryl, I wish I had a good answer. I have asked myself that question many times. I've also asked myself, why is it that so many in the Democratic Party are pro, they're anti-Christians, but they're pro-Islamism.
Right.
Why is this the sort of religion of choice for the left? It doesn't make any sense on its face because the values, the laws don't line up. There is a guy named Rabbi Elie Michel. He wrote a book called The War Against the Bible. And I think, Cheryl, what his interesting premise, and this is my best shot at answering the question, is he asked the question, why is it that, people in, let's say, in the pro-transgender movement and far left kind of Antifa crowd and radical, let's say, right-wing Islamists, why do they get together? Like, well, why do they agree? They don't agree on anything, but they agree that they hate the Bible. They hate the idea that the Bible is a code of conduct by which they are held. Neither of them wants to be held by it, and that's the issue. That's my best conjecture, Cheryl. I know there are some good Democrats that do care about this, but to your point, by and large, we don't see the Democratic Party talking about this. This is something they did talk about in the past. I think we're seeing a new, Mamdani Democratic Party that's being taken over, and the Democratic Party we know is disappearing in front of us.
Now, you're in Israel right now, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you're in Israel, and I know you frequent there, do you live there now? Is that your?
I go back and forth. I've come here a lot.
Okay, so not that you can speak for the Israel people, but you have a very good sense of how Israel, just the general tone on the street is toward America and this administration. What is Israel looking at America? How is America? How is Israel regarding America now? When you see things like Mamdani, as you mentioned, being elected, but you also see President Trump making great strides to support Israel.
Yeah, President Trump probably has about 180% approval rating in Israel. Even among the left, he's very, very popular because people know that people know where he stands. But I think, to your point, Cheryl, the big conversation in Israel is people come up to me and they shake their heads and they say, what is up with Tucker Carlson? What is up with Candace Owens? What is up with Mamdani? In other words, the rise of hatred of Jews in America is shocking to people in Israel. They don't understand it. They don't know why. And they also see that America is facing the same enemy that Israel is facing. And this was actually beautifully stated at Turning Point the other night by, forgive me, but one of the hostages, I don't know if you saw this speak, but one of the hostages that I think spent over 400 days in the dark depths of the blackness in a Hamas terror tunnel in captivity, talked about this concept that Israel and America are fighting the same evil. And so I think that's the other thing is people in Israel know what the bad guys are up to. They know the tactics. They see it being executed in America, and they're very concerned. And out of a love for America. I mean, people in Israel love America, and like a brother or a cousin or a sister, and they want to see America succeed. And there's a lot of concern in Israel about what's happening in America, and will America stand up and remain America, or will it go the way of Europe? And that's the big question people are asking.
That's a big question that I wonder about as well, and I know you do too. So, just finish with this: National Association Christian Lawmakers. What's the website, and what is the latest that you guys are working on there outside of Syria?
Yeah, the National Association of Christian Lawmakers is the brainchild of Jason Rapert and then Governor Mike Huckabee. And it's an amazing organization that has chapters in every state. And it's predominantly state-based lawmakers, although now some federal lawmakers are starting to join, and we think that'll pick up really quickly. And it's people that their faith is the lens through which they see in their legislative duties. And the NACL covers the range of issues from life to Israel to education, religious release time, all these different kinds of policies. They are looking for pro-biblical policies that they can advance in this, predominantly again in the states as an organization. It's a brilliant idea. They're growing very quickly. And it's exciting to go to their conferences and meet lawmakers who are animated by their faith, and they want to they believe that God has given them the privilege to serve, and they want to be sure that they can use that time to the best of their ability to do the best work that they can do. And I think it's important, Cheryl, because I know we all joke about politicians. We all do. I do. You do. We all do. But it's encouraging to meet people who are in it for the right reasons. They want to advance the ball in the right way. They want to stand for God. They want to stand for truth. They want to stand for America's biblical foundations. And if we can get enough people like that to keep fighting, then we can stay America, and we don't have to be Europe.
Great organization. It really does sound like a great group. National Association of Christian Lawmakers. You are the senior advisor, Matt Faraci. I want to thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.
Cheryl, I wish you and your listeners a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everybody. And just remember that, while you're celebrating, remember these people overseas that are persecuted, and make your New Year's resolution. You're going to do something about it. One of the organizations we mentioned on this interview would be a great place to start.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
And that's another Bold and Blunt. Remember, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com. And of course, wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time. In the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.